Hey friends, Allison Ramirez here, back today with a brand new video that I have been looking forward to filming for some time now, but I only have the bandwidth to do one long form video a week. Today's video is all about a behind the scenes look at the life of a Christian book editor. I know I've talked about editing in several videos, which I will link below, but today I'm going to show you from my side of things, my process that I have developed from start to finish of when I first hear from an author to sending them the final edited book. Please excuse those random white splotches on my wall. This is our rental apartment, and I had some of those sticks to your wall shelf, and when I took the shelf off, it ripped off a bunch of the paint, so it was just like this big open space. I don't think the paint makes it look much better because it's not an open space, but now it's just a big white blob. Anyway, if all goes well, we will be moving out of this apartment in just a few short months and buying our first home, which is still so overwhelming to me, but exciting. My husband and I have lived in this same apartment for, it's going to be 5 years next year, which is hard to believe. It's about that time to finally get something new, especially our first home. But to begin, how did I get into becoming a Christian book editor? It was definitely a process because it all started off when I was looking to self-publish my first book, and I was learning about the different parts of the self-publishing process, such as the cover design, the formatting, the editing, the marketing, all of that. And I thought to myself, is there any of this that I can learn the skills and be able to do myself going forward in the future? Now, cover design was out of the question. I'm not artistically creative. I don't have a graphic design background, nor did I have any interest to try to learn it. Editing was more up my alley because I had already gotten a bachelor's degree in English. I had taken a grammar course back in college. I had read a few different books on editing. So I thought, this is a good foundation. I can definitely go deeper into this. And then lo and behold, I thought there was going to be some sort of process or course or something on the market for me to really jump in, especially being a Christian book editor, because there's some differences to just being a traditional run-of-the-mill book editor. Firstly, I don't work with books that glorify sin or glorify behaviors or ways of life that are against the Christian faith. Now, that to say, I edit books that are true to life, meaning that the characters could be making decisions or living in a certain way that's contrary to Christianity. However, that is being authentic to life and how characters are. However, through the book, those characters are wrestling and grappling with their shortcomings and their weaknesses. That's totally understandable. But if a book is just overtly, especially if it's nonfiction, if it's advocating for anti-Christian ideas and concepts, I'm not going to be the best editor for that book. So all but to say, I really strive to work with Christian authors. Specifically myself, I am Catholic, so I work with a lot of Catholic authors, but on books that are good, true, and beautiful, and are desiring to paint reality as it is, but not leave their characters as they are, and to show some sense of redemption or growth in their characters throughout the book or throughout the series. That's a little bit of who I'm looking to work with. In terms of genres, I work with all kinds of genres. I am both an author of fiction and nonfiction myself. I also have a degree in theology, so I feel very confident to work on prayer books, theological, memoir, and nonfiction works. But then I also have a background in fiction, so my favorite genres to work with are historical fiction, sci-fi dystopian, and contemporary romance. However, I have worked with pretty much everything at this point. This year, in 2025, I had 45 different projects. I call them projects, not books, because not everything I edit is a book. For example, I worked with someone this year who was working on an academic thesis paper. I helped him out with that. I was working with somebody that was writing a short story, somebody that was writing a children's book, and most everyone I work with is writing like a full-length novel, fiction, or a full-length nonfiction book. So I call them projects. 45. My goal for 2026 is to hit that 50 number, which is an average of one project a week. There's 54 weeks in the year, so that gives me a couple weeks off for holiday and things like that. That's my goal. But I'm going to go ahead and show you on my computer, on my brand new website, a little bit of my process and what I do when I'm first receiving that initial inquiry email from an author, and just what it's like to work with me. Okay, so this is the starting place when someone is seeking to work with me on editing. Now, they don't have to contact me this way. They can send me an email. I often have people messaging me on different writing groups that I'm in because I post about my services there. But I really prefer that people reach out to me this way, just because when you hit this contact form, it already has everything I need to know about the book there. So potential clients of mine would put their name, their email, this is an explanation, whatever message they want to share, and then they put their genre, their word count, their timeline, like it could be timeline of when they want the edits to be done or when they're publishing their book, their budget, if they have one, the type of editing they want, and I've got 3 main types right here, a synopsis of their book, and then they submit it, and this goes straight into my email box. In the past, I didn't have one of these contact forms, and I would just have people reach out to me via email and just say something like, hey, looking for editing for my book. And that doesn't give me much to go off of, and I would have to do a lot of back and forth with them through email, which of course takes time, to get a sense of what are you writing, how long is it, where are you in the process. All that back and forth, a lot of it can be eliminated by having an in-depth form like this, so I can already get a great picture of who I'm working with, what their needs are, so that I can cut down on that time. I wouldn't say it's wasted time, but I would say it's inefficient time. Some people have an admin assistant that covers all that for them. I don't. I'm a one girl show. I'm just by myself over here at Trinity Publishing. So once I get this intake form, if you will, I can get a sense on, one, if this is going to be a good fit for me, if this is in my timeline, if I can meet their timeline, and also the budget is important as well, because editing can be expensive. And I pride myself on having pretty competitive rates. My rates are often actually quite a bit cheaper than a lot of competitors out there. But even then, people still can sometimes price on how much it costs, just because of the amount of time and energy and effort that the task takes, and the fact that as a small business, this is what I do for my livelihood. This isn't what I do for a hobby. And so this money that I'm getting goes straight back to like my rent and my food and electricity for me to be able to live. All these different factors go into the process of whether or not the author and I will end up working together. I will say 90% of the time, most everyone who reaches out to me, we end up working together. If their timeline is a little bit short, I still try to fit them in and make it work. And if there's some differences in budget desires, I usually offer payment plans or discounts depending on the situation. But this is where someone would go. You can do the contact tab right here on my website, or if you actually go down to services, there's several buttons that take you to that same page as on the home page of the website. I also have a very detailed page that's on my website that's devoted to my editing services, so that someone can easily find what I offer. They can already get a sense both of my own background. So right here, this column right below me mentions my education, my experiences, the actual names of different publishers I have edited for, as well as different writing groups and communities I'm a part of. I'll do the same for my coaching services. And then I clearly walk through the 3 types of editing that I offer on books, so that someone can get a sense, okay, based on what I've written or what others have told me, this is the kind of editing that I want to hire an editor for. This is the pricing section, which is also very important. And I have a range, which helps with people that if there's a money issue, at least I can put somebody on the lower end of the range to further help them out. So 10,000 words and less is usually $75 to $225 for that edit. This could be things like, it's often short stories or articles or blog posts, academic essays and such. Probably the most common I get is this 50 to 70,000 word range, or the 70 to 90,000 word range, which you can count on paying anywhere from $650 to $1,100. And that is a full in-depth edit of the author's choice. Now, it's usually just one round, so one pass through with comments, with edits and feedback. I do tell all of my clients that I am totally willing to recheck different sections, especially if I say, hey, you should work on rewriting these couple of pages. I will definitely review a couple of those pages, no extra charge. It just means that I'm not going to go and read the entire book a second time unless the author specifically pays for that. If the author wants a full second round of editing, I actually offer a great rate, which is half off of the first edit, meaning that if you spent $250 on your first round of editing, you would only have to pay $125 the second time around. So it's still the same amount of work for me, but I just cut the price in half to make it more affordable for the author. And also because I have read the book already once before, I get a sense of the story and I can read a little bit faster and with more knowledge. But that's my pricing here. As you can see from the editing highlights, I have worked with a number of books. These first two books were published by actual traditional Christian publishers. I think this one was published by Chrism Press, and this one was published by Full Quiver Publishing. Both of these two books are self-published by indie authors who reached out to me. These next two were also published by indie authors. This book on Padre Pio was put out by Ave Maria Press. This next one, Classroom Tapestry, was Redemption Press. So I have a big assortment of publishers that I work with and individual authors and genres. Classroom Tapestry was like a nonfiction memoir on someone's teaching experience. This one in the middle is a book about a saint. The Osiris War was very much sci-fi dystopian novel. Agatha's Angel was more a contemporary romance type novel. So lots of different books I have worked with. I also offer a manuscript review, which many authors I work with have found beneficial, especially if you're not sure which of these three types of editing services you want. I will read the first 15,000 words and I will actually write a detailed review of all my strengths and weaknesses that I see in the book, and what I'd recommend. Do that for a flat rate of $100. And these are some FAQs, as I mentioned. I do have a payment plan. The timeline is usually about 2 to 3 weeks. Obviously, if somebody's giving me a short story or an article or a blog post, I can get that done in a few days. But for books that are like the 50K to 70K length, usually takes me about 2 to 3 weeks. I try to work on 1 to 2 projects at a time. I never have more than 2 projects just because it gets too confusing and overwhelming and I want to be able to give my all to the project. So when I book authors, I book on a week basis. So I don't take more than 2 clients per week, if that makes sense, because there's going to be some spillover. I might not finish the project in a week. It might take me a week and a half or 2 weeks, but don't usually book 2 authors a week. It's usually 1 author is most common. Once I've gone through that initial intake form, the author and I are set to work together. The next step I do is I officially schedule them in my scheduler, which I use Google Docs for this. I just put this together and I'm really looking forward to using it in 2026. I can record my finances for all of the different services I offer within my business. So my editing is at the top. So I just go ahead and put the author name or publishing company name, the title of the book and the genre, the editing type I'm doing, the word count and the price, the date I schedule it and the deadline, and then the overall income I'm going to be making. So this is just really helpful for me so that I can keep track of everything. I have everything all in one place. This is what I do for my editing, my books, my other writing, my coaching, my newsletter, all the things that are under the umbrella of Trinity Tree Publishing, which is my small business. Okay, this is my accounting payment software that I use for my editing services. In the past, I had people pay me any which way they wanted. I had people mailing me checks, people sending me money through Zelle,
through Venmo, through PayPal, and through Square. And it just got really confusing because I had money coming in from so many different places and it was hard to track everything. And so I finally said, I'm going to find one stop shop, which for me is Wave. And Wave is free to use. There's just a percentage of each transaction. I think it's 2% goes back to Wave. So, for example, if I charge someone $100, I might get $98 that's deposited into my account. But it lets me create invoices where I can put my logo about my business. I can put the invoice date and when it's due. I can put the service I'm offering, the price. At the bottom here, I can put like a little terms of agreement and notes. And then I can email it out to the client and they can pay directly on the spot with their credit card. So then also everything is logged in Wave as well. So all of my payments, I can get a sense of each month, how much am I making or not making. All the money is coming into one place, and it just saves things from getting confusing and always asking the author, so how are we going to do payments?
So once all that logistical stuff is completed and I actually have the author's manuscript on my computer, usually my process is that I like to use Google Docs or Microsoft Word, and I insert comments throughout. A really nice feature of using Google Docs is that it can be shared with the author and you can see changes in real time. And I like to use the suggestion feature when I'm making my edits because the author can either choose to accept or decline the change I'm making, which I think is really helpful. And also the author can come in and they can make changes to the document real quick and I can make changes. So Google Docs is very helpful. Microsoft Word works well too. I just use the track changes feature. And before I sit down to work on an editing project, I always say a quick prayer, just asking for clarity and wisdom and guidance from the Lord so that I can do my very best on this editing project for the client. So I always start off with that. I try to sit down for about an hour, typically, usually more than that, and it gets a little too tedious and I might start missing things because I just need a brain break. It amounts to about 50 pages a day is usually the most that I'm able to edit. And even that is a stretch depending on if it's double or single space. Sometimes I only get to 20 or 25 pages. Depending on the day, sometimes I work on just one editing project. If I have two projects, I might split my time and work half on one and then later in the day, half on the other. It really just depends, but I try to devote Monday through Thursday as my book editing days. Friday, if I absolutely need to, but I try to save Friday as a content creation day where I film my YouTube videos, I put together my newsletter that goes out. And then of course, Saturday, Sunday, I really try to save as family days because when you run your own small business, it's really easy to overwork yourself. And I don't want to work on the weekends. If I absolutely have to work on Saturday, but I always take Sunday off as that Sabbath day of rest. Okay, so now I'm going to just share some tips with those of you who are interested in becoming editors yourself. If you want to get started, consider, first of all, what is your identity and what sets you apart? There are a lot of different book editors out there. What makes you unique? For me, what makes me unique is that I am a Catholic book editor. So a lot of Catholic authors, we have the same shared faith, will come to me for editing. I also have degrees in theology and English creative writing, which makes me feel confident to work on both fiction and nonfiction because I bring educational backgrounds to both of those. So I think that expands the types of books I feel comfortable reading and working on. Also ask yourself, what are your services? Because some people only like to do developmental editing. They don't want to do the nitty-gritty correcting spelling and grammar, or they don't feel confident. They want to focus on the story arc, the characters, and other people vice versa. So just narrow down. There's many different types of editing services. Which ones do you want to offer to your clients? How are you promoting yourself? This was a big one for me because you could have all this experience, you could set up a great website, you could have your rates, and then it's just crickets. No one's coming to you. And that's what I really struggled with in my first 2 to 3 years. Like I would get one person reaching out to me a month or every 2 months. And then the rest of the time I would have no workflow. Now I'm at the point where every single week, I usually have at least one person I'm working with. As you can see, there's 52 weeks in the year. I had 45 projects this year. So I'm bad at math, at least 80% of the time, which is a huge improvement to when I first started and nobody was reaching out to me. I couldn't get any clients, even with my rate super low. And now, because when you start working with clients, and if you do a good job, then they're going to start word of mouth sharing with their author friends, and your name gets put out there and more people see you as trustworthy and want to reach out to you. So just be patient, give it time. I'm 5 years in, and this is my first year. Actually, I feel like it was like a successful year where I made profit and I had consistent work. So it took me 5 years to get to that point. So just know that it might not take you that long, but just because it's taking you a while doesn't mean that you won't eventually take off in your services. So I have a website for sure, as I showed you what mine looked like. Be posting on social media that you are an editor, that you are looking for clients, a little bit about your background, your experience, why you are an editor. Be a part of different writing communities. I'm a part of Legend Fiction. I'm a part of the Catholic Writers Guild. Also join editing groups. I'm a part of the Christian Editor Connection group. So the more different editing groups and forums and committees you're a part of, sharing about your work, especially if you're putting a post that stays on that site, the more likely you are to get more leads and get more people reaching out to you. I read somewhere that it can take someone hearing about you 7 times before they actually reach out. Meaning, don't just think someone heard about me once, so they're going to reach out. It might be the 7th time they come across a post or a video that you've done that they finally fill out your intake form and get the process started to work together. Consider how you're going to be taking payments. I already talked about that. And make sure you figure out how you're going to be logging your business income. For me, I actually set up a separate business account. I'm a sole proprietor. I have my own credit debit card. I try to have all my money feeding into my business account instead of my personal account. It's nice with sole proprietor because it's actually one account and I can log in for my personal check-ins and then my business check-ins, but I can see them together on the same screen, but they're just different accounts. Make sure that you're meticulously logging everything for tax season, and also make sure you are accounting for taxes. There are state taxes. For my state, I pay quarterly taxes, which are actually not that bad because I'm not making so much money. Maybe if I was making like $100,000 a year, I'd have to pay more in state taxes, but they're pretty low. In April, it's going to be my first time actually paying federal government taxes on my business. So I'm a little bit nervous because I don't know how that's going to go. I don't know how much I'm going to have to pay back. So set aside some money. If you're making $500 on an editing project, that is not how much you're really going to be making. Hold back at least, I would suggest 10%, maybe 15%. It doesn't hurt to hold back more, and then you find out you actually don't need to give as much, and that's just money that comes back to you. But you don't want it to come tax season and you owe like $3,000 in taxes and you don't have that money. So I always just set aside, if I make $500, I just know, all right, at least 20, 25 of those dollars are going to go towards taxes. You might not get there, I'm not exactly right, but just, I would say, 10 to 15% if you want to always set that aside with each project. And that's on top of the money that gets taken out with my payment processor. As I mentioned, it's like a 2% they take out. So if I am charging someone $500, I might get $480 deposited into my account after the processing fees taken out. And then I might have to take another $30 out for taxes. So on a $500 project, maybe I only make $450. I always tell my clients everything is factored into the price. So if I tell them this is going to cost you $500, that is including taxes, processing fees, all that. And in my head, I just know that I'm really making $450, if that makes sense. You can do it however you want, as long as you're not fudging numbers or you're not missing anything and you're making sure that you have a spreadsheet where you're tracking everything. It's also important to constantly be growing in knowledge as an editor. The Chicago Manual of Style is always putting out new editions and revisions, so making sure you're up to date on the current version and the different changes that they're making. Watching educational videos, reading books, participating in webinars, especially staying up with the trends as well, the book publishing trends and what's happening out there, networking with other editors, sharing your experiences, what's working well, what isn't working well. And then some other little perks I'd like to offer for the authors I work with is I like to promote them on my newsletter when they have released their book. So once they actually have a link to it and it's gone live, I will just put a little like shout out on my newsletter for them. I just do that for free for everybody that I work with as a little thank you for working with me. And also always ask the authors if they're willing to write an endorsement for you. You can never have too many endorsements. It's just their words of praise, what they're grateful for and how you helped them. You can post those on your website, your social media. Don't underestimate having too many. You can never have too many endorsements, in my opinion. But I hope this video was helpful. I hope if you're looking to get into editing that you know where to start. Also, if you are a Christian author looking to become an editor, you can please reach out to me. I am happy to help to support you or in any way I can and share my experiences with you, because I remember how lonely it was when I was first getting started and everything was very overwhelming. Also, check out the other editing videos I will put up on the screen that I have filmed. And if you have any questions about what it's like to be a book editor and what the behind the scenes life looks like for me, feel free to share those in the comments as well. I'm really excited. I have some end of the year wrap up, goal setting, year in review videos coming for you in these next couple weeks. And I have an extra special, really big surprise that I'm going to share with you that is currently in the works. I can't talk about it yet, but in 2026, I'm going to have some really cool new elements in my business that I'm looking forward to sharing with you. So, God bless, and subscribe, share with your friends.